Hello, this is Wade Frazier. This is April 2nd, 2026, 11:30 a.m. This post is going to be a slight departure from my series with Brian O'Leary. I have a question from a pal kind of brought this up. And it's basically how I see the world and how it informs my efforts. So without further ado, I'm going to get into it. So again, I've been writing publicly since 1996. And as my readers know, my work has always been scholarly and scientific. And I don't assert anything unless I'm highly confident of it. And uh, and again, for instance, as all of my early writings on the medical racket, from circulatory disease to fluoridation to vaccination, it's all been vindicated by subsequent events. So yeah, I was right about all of it. My Columbus essay on Christopher Columbus and the mythology, and that was actually popular in high schools and even colleges, grade schools. So I'd heard from all sorts of people about that. 25 years ago, it was really popular. Not so much anymore because my radical thesis is now pretty much a mainstream understanding. I spent 12 years comparing Gary Ween's account of his John Tower conversation regarding the John Kennedy assassination before I wrote publicly about it. So, and again, I never saw a convincing piece of evidence that contradicted Gary's story. I knew Gary was reporting the truth as he knew it, but I did my homework, and yeah, it was all right. In fact, today, Gary's radical, crazy scenario is actually the mainstream one. So this is without crediting Gary, of course, but yeah, Gary's reporting is basically now the mainstream scenario of the John Kennedy assassination. Imagine that. And there I've made a few errors in my work, kind of relying on other people, sources, and those have been trivial. And when I have made errors and I fixed them, then I explained them. Explained one last year when David Rockefeller's called Dennis Lee. It was a different conversation than I thought it was. Dennis had numerous national full page ads, and anyway, so I got my thinking incorrect on when Rockefeller called Dennis. It wasn't in 2008. It was in 2001, I think. Uh, no, 1999. But anyway, so it was just again a few of those kind of mistakes I've made, and I fixed them and I explained how I made them. But that's about it. So my work has always been really supported. And again, I don't go public on stuff unless I'm really confident of what I'm writing about. I waited till David Rockefeller died before naming him. Same went for Henry Kissinger and then Bill WPA Hitman. Yeah, I don't. Again, a lot of those people I won't name them while they're alive. And if people read Dennis Lee's books, they'll see that my journey is actually far more involved and spectacular than when I publicly revealed at this time. And one day, maybe I can reveal it all publicly. But again, I'm trying to protect people. Um, and my journey, again, it's my readers know this, or I had a number of paranormal experiences that essentially propelled me on my journey. And sometimes even I have a hard time believing it actually happened that way, but I lived it and it did. So I can appreciate, public skepticism of those events. But that's partly why I always state that I see people that have had their own awakening experiences. Because when they do, then my journey doesn't seem so strange any longer. And again, Brian O'Leary thought people needed to have paranormal experiences to really get it. My jury was always out on that. Kind of still is, but I always suspect that Brian was right. That only what he called spiritualists or consciousness researchers can really see the big picture and really be, helpful for changing the world, making the biggest event in the human journey come to pass. That kind of thing. Uh, and there's again, I've people in my position, there's a lot we just can't say publicly. Again, like the astronaut who encountered ETs on the UFOs on the ISS, or my friend's underground technology show given by a dissident faction of the global elite. At this point, I don't get to divulge identities, and so if I outlive my friend, I will reveal his identity. And actually, I'm waiting for several more people to die if I outlive them before I can really kind of tell the whole story. This is a reality of doing what I do. But the main reason though that my work is always held up is that it's all based on my experience or experiences of those close to me. You know, yeah, experience may be the only teacher, and you really can't beat experience for learning. So, yeah, my work's always is done about experience, but not too much theory, mostly experience. And when it does get theoretical, let's say, well, it's basically got a big foundation on experience. And in this post, I'm really not going to get into. So I've done so much in my work of presenting my sources, presenting my experiences, all this stuff, and then explaining how they were important, etc. But I'm not really going to do that in this post. I'm just going to discuss how I see things. All of that behind the scenes stuff of my journey and my study and my friends and all this stuff. I'm gonna again I'll link to it, but at this point in the company post I link to this stuff, but at this point I'm not really gonna explain it because then it'd be a 5 hour post. I don't have time for that. So I'll really discuss how I see things and how it has informed my effort. And yeah, so that's what I'm about to do. So the bottom line is that we all live forever. We're all children of the Creator, and love is the energy of creation. And in the Creator's eyes, the worst of us are little more than a child at play. And all roads lead back to the Godhead. And so some paths are straighter, some are more adventurous. There are dark paths to take, light paths to take. It's all part of the fun. Earth is actually a creator school, and so this is where souls come to learn to be creators, and they come here to learn quickly. Even though time and space really don't exist past this dimension like they do here, which is not easy to imagine. So I totally get trying to imagine realities that don't have time and space. That's not easy to understand here, obviously. But my understanding is there are lessons to be learned from being on the physical plane that cannot be learned anywhere else in creation. And they're largely related to learning how to take care of our bodies. This is what's kind of there's a big reason why we came here: to have bodies, take care of them, have pain, to love, to learn, all this kind of stuff. And most souls on this planet, anyway, most souls have chosen to grow through pain. In fact, I've seen them called C students. And so they still graduate, but they muddle through. And they take many lifetimes of very painful karma, etc., for their souls to learn the lessons they came here to learn. It's all good, but it certainly is painful. And that's one way of doing it. There's also learning through joy, the A students. And so I vote for learning through joy. But the world is mostly most of the souls here came to learn through pain, and consequently, few people ever awaken past their indoctrination and conditioning. They're creatures of indoctrination and conditioning, which is all about survival, which is about in groups, and anyway, and this goes back to social animals, etc. So we're animals, and so there's so much of how our evolutionary past it's evident in the way humans act today and how we built our civilizations, our societies, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so few people ever awaken past their indoctrination and conditioning, and even the smart ones. And so the smart ones get a different kind than the masses do, but it's still to control them, control what they think. And again, Brian O'Leary's question of whether humanity is a sentient species, which I discussed in my previous video, makes it more understandable, and so so souls can choose to learn through joy, which that may be what my work's all about. And say, how about a world of joy? How about a world of love and abundance instead of scarcity and fear? How about that? I think that horizons of the human potential will come into view that today are just unimaginable. So I think there'll be new horizons in human potential if we have a world based in abundance versus a world based in scarcity. And it's a primarily matter of the heart, not the head. This is again back to love being the energy of creation. So it's people with love in their hearts which are going to make a dent. Michael Rhodes, one of my favorite metaphysical mentors, and I've read a bunch of his books. He visited two future Earths, and one was populated by the A students based on joy, another by the D students. It was all about fear and greed, and it was a nightmare world. And so, and I've known psychonauts who've also made similar visits. So I don't consider that to be an imaginary reporting that Rhodes did. This is a good. Psychonauts can visit these realities, these future probable Earths, etc. And so this is something that I learned during my journey. And I said I had paranormal. I don't recommend that people investigate paranormal literature, etc., until they've had paranormal experiences. Yeah, otherwise it becomes some kind of intellectual exercise, which is mostly useless. And so, yeah. But to get to, our so-called mainstream science, according to, mainstream cosmology and physics, our universe is nothing but energy. And if something moves, that's because of energy. Even though the greatest scientists admitted that we don't know where the energy came from or what it is, but we know all we can do is describe what it does. And life itself is a voracious consumer of energy. Again, my body burns energy 100,000 times as fast as the sun produces it, pound for pound. And the journey of life on Earth has always been about getting enough energy to survive and reproduce, and to avoid becoming energy for some other life form. So the whole red in tooth and claw observation in the never-ending struggle to survive and reproduce on Earth. As Orgat astutely commented in his work, the biological compulsion to survive and reproduce is the root of all violence. And that also goes for humans. And so, and the human journey back to and again, I've written a great length on the journey of life on Earth. It was really fun for me to write my life's most ambitious essay back in 2013, 14. And the journey of life on Earth, the human journey mirrors it. So the human journey is all about, again, ever higher levels of energy consumption. And initial golden ages, when a new energy source was exploited, or again, and also in the journey of life on Earth, quite often after mass extinction, some marginal creatures became the dominant ones, and there was these golden ages, rather brief golden ages, but essentially exploiting a new energy source or having ecosystems cleared for their use. But humans and all animals, all life is good at reproducing. So they always, as Malthus said, they always breed up to the limits of the energy supply. And so then breed up. So the golden ages would give way to battles for survival, as they bred up to the limits of the energy supply. We have a brief respite from that right now. The Industrial Revolution, with the rise of energy-driven machines, actually changed that dynamic. So women in industrial nations are actually having the lowest number of children ever. In fact, below replacement rates. So at current rates, the world's population is going to shrink. And again, the world is following suit. Only, I think, Africa, maybe a few Asian nations have birth rates above replacement rates. That will cause population to expand. And so women industrialization are having the lowest number of children ever. Yeah, it's less than 2 children per woman, like in the United States. Again, in the West, industrialized nations is less than 2 children per woman. And another reason, though, for that is that with the Industrial Revolution, with the rise of energy-driven machines, there's less need to exploit people. So yeah, we don't need slaves anymore. In fact, we have a Bucky Fuller called them energy slaves, and so the average American gets the benefit of about several hundred virtual humans waiting on them hand and foot, which no potentate on earth really ever again. The average American is richer than Louis XIV, who was the richest man in Europe 3 centuries ago. So yeah, so this is industrialization has done that, even though we are running out of our primary energy supply a million times as fast as it was created with again fossil fuels. So yeah, oil, coal, and gas are all being burned up a million times as fast as they were created. Little bit of problem there. In fact, this century we're going to be largely we'll be done with gas and oil in this century at the current rates, and coal is right behind it. So yeah, the fossil fuel era will end in this century. One way or another, it will end in this century. Um, and with the right, and I've been waiting for this. I've been writing about it for many years. I've always said that the reproduction of intelligence is in its infancy, and this AI boom that we're having. I'm surprised it took this long, but here we go. And for me, it's AI robotics. So AI robotics is the big deal. That's the big one because it'll end all human drudgery soon. And so, but only if the energy issue is permanently solved. And so, right now, I mean, we're hitting, you're seeing it. We're hitting up against energy limits again with, coal-fired power plants are making a comeback, et cetera. It's a totally catastrophic way to go. Or now nuclear energies see another day in the sun. Fission is not the way to go. So when the energy issue is permanently solved, then all else will follow from that. And AI robotics is arriving just in time and it'll eliminate all human drudgery. And every human on Earth will be richer than Bill Gates is today. This is just like the average American is richer than Louis XIV was. That's coming fast if we can solve the energy issue. That's the one. Everything else is secondary. And Brian, his "Are humans a sentient species?" question, which in my previous video I mentioned that, which was triggered by all the crazy reactions Brian got from leading scientists, progressives, environmentalists, and stuff. I mean, he get these crazy reactions of denial and fear when he even mentioned free energy, and so how to say it? Initially, it's dismaying, but eventually you become used to it, and then you understand why. And this is because people are addicted to scarcity, which I'll get here in a minute. But as humanity's surplus energy has increased over the epochs of the human journey, and again, I've divided the human journey into 4 epochs so far. The interval between the first stone tools and behaviorally modern humans, and then the conquest of Earth, which took about 50,000 years. Then the agrarian epoch, which is about 12,000 years, 10,000 years long, and now the industrial epoch, which is only a couple hundred years old. And so, yeah, the epochs keep getting shorter, the energy use keeps getting higher, and also human standards of living keep rising. And so, with each epoch, humans became less violent and more humane. And so, this is a trend that with the epoch based on free energy, which the technology is older than I am, yeah, there will never be poverty again, pollution, war, crime, all that goes in the dustbin in human history. How about it? Well, almost all of humanity is either ignorant or when they hear about it, they react in denial and fear. And this is the stuff that was so dismaying to Brian and anybody who's been in this field. They go through this period of dismay, even disgust with what they encounter from humanity. This is, and again, people are just trying to survive, and stuff like this is so far beyond their comprehension, even the real so-called smart guys. Again, so I know that again, my friend got underground technology, so which again, I heard of that underground technology show, and also like Sparky Sweets Tech, etc. Long before I heard about people like Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project witnesses describing the same technologies. Yeah, it was. I did again back to experiences. I didn't come to these understandings by surfing the internet or listening to speakers. It was people close to friends of mine, family, etc., who had the experiences in these areas. And it's like, and that's how I became informed about this stuff. And then now Again, now there's little cottage industries around it, but I learned my lessons before this became, a big popular subject. Um, so my friend got a show from a dissident faction of the global elite, and global elite, so they've kept free energy tech and anti-gravity and all sorts of amazing technology sequestered from public awareness and use. Again, for the last century, Greer had a video called "The Last Century" about this, and sequestered from public awareness, and they have defeated all independent efforts, and it's all about to keep their power games intact. And people who are power hungry because they do not feel power within themselves. Again, love is not in their hearts. Okay, and so this is back to fear being here. And so yeah, the psychopaths rule the world. This is how it's been for a long time now. And so trying to change that. Uh, most of the suppression is structural, as I've written about. So many participate in so many levels. So again, I saw this back to my 1% conspiracy, 99% complicity. Again, we got taken out repeatedly. The minions of the global elite, they had no idea who they were doing it for. They were just had perverse incentives. So they were hitmen and women who were officials and this kind of stuff, and actual criminals that they could hire by the global elite to take people like us out, which led to shortened and shattered lives, which is the standard story in this field. And the people who are the hitmen and women, they didn't know, they didn't care. They didn't care if they might be helping destroy the planet. All they cared about was their short-term gain. Again, so that the hitman and the sheriff's deputy there in Ventura County, his annual pension is $300,000 a year today. He was compensated well, as were many other people for getting their hands bloody. So how it works. But all those elites and all their minions, they're toying with making Earth uninhabitable and taking humanity with it. So this is what we're on the brink of. Either we're going to have this world of abundance and love, or game over for human civilization and maybe for the species. So this is what we're facing in this century. This will be resolved one way or the other in this century, I believe. I may not live to see it, but I hope that I do. If it's the happy ending, we shall see. And I eventually wrote how humans just seem addicted to scarcity. And off the top of my head, in 2008, somebody actually asked me to write an essay. In fact, this post actually was made from the request of a friend. And off the top of my head, one day in 2008, I created the framework for free energy awareness from level, I think, 0 to 20. And I was able to do it in an hour off the top of my head because by that time, I had witnessed thousands of reactions to the idea of free energy. And so it's ignorance, denial, fear. And then if they get beyond denial and fear, et cetera, it's maybe some lazy acceptance. Or if they want to do something, they're still boxed in by scarcity and fear because all their approaches are doomed to failure, basically because they're rooted in scarcity and fear. Yeah, I think that an effort to be successful has to be aligned with the outcome, which is what my mentor Seth said. If you want to be a practicing idealist, every step of the way has to be worthy of the goal, which is what I've been trying to do. And and all that denial and fear. In fact, the worst, most entrenched people were the so-called smart, all the scientists and stuff. They were the ones that Brian was most dismayed by. Who were just, again, crazy reactions to denial and fear. And which I witnessed the same. Yeah, when you do this, this is what you encounter when you start playing these games. The mainstream is totally brainwashed. It kind of like back to Orwell's 1984. Most people, it's just tabloids and punching the clock and getting some beer when they go home, watching TV show, and then going to bed and get up and do it again. The masses, they don't need that much brainwashing. They're supposed to follow orders. But the so-called the smart ones, the political class, the 25% or whatever of the American population that's really politically active, et cetera, they're brainwashed. And so they're all brainwashed in one way or another. The smartest, they're all brainwashed. And various different kinds of brainwashing. Like I've seen it called treetops and grassroots brainwashing. Depending on where your station of life is in your level of intelligence, there's brainwashing tailored to order to keep you asleep. And so So the mainstream is brainwashed, and the left and right fall into structuralist and conspiracist camps, which both of those are also traps. Again, neither one of them by itself really explains the big picture. So you need a comprehensive perspective to really understand what's going on. Yeah, conspiracism and structuralism, they fall short of really understanding the big picture. And when I studied for my essay that I wrote it back in 2013 and 14, and again, as I divided the human journey into these epochs, which was based on each time was exploiting a new energy source, from the first when Homo erectus became apex predators and controlled fire, to again the conquest of the world, to raising crops and exploiting fossil fuels. Each epoch was based on exploiting a new energy source. What I realized eventually was for each epoch, and I said these epochs are happening, they're happening quicker, the energy is going up more, but no, until now, nobody ever saw the next epoch coming. Yeah, so you couldn't have, if you encountered a being, one of those upright apes, 3.5 million years ago, or behaviorally modern human, 70,000 years ago in Africa, or the first people experimenting with trying to harvest, raise crops, or the people who, before we started exploiting fossil fuels, particularly in England. If you had asked people before those new epochs came, if you told them what was coming, they would have no framework to understand what you were talking about. It would have been totally beyond their imagination. They couldn't imagine it. People couldn't see the next one coming. And so as I did my work and had my experiences, etc., and as I wrote that essay, I realized that, well, no wonder everybody's afraid of free energy and all this kind of, no wonder nobody can see the next epoch coming. They never could. So this is the first time that people have seen the next epoch coming before it got here. And it's not just people like me, like TV shows like Star Trek. Those are sort of hints of what I call the fifth epoch. If you had a world based on abundance, free energy, et cetera, anti-gravity, all these kinds of things. And so this is something that there are some people that are seeing it coming. And I think that we need to see it coming in order to try to pursue it. I don't think we can pursue something we can't imagine it. And this is why most of the humanity can't even imagine what I'm talking about. That's okay and that's normal. And I've stopped trying to interact with the masses, because the only thing that's going to wake them up to the reality of free energy is the reality. When free energy is delivering their life and anti-gravity is delivering their life, only then are they going to start to understand. Until then, they won't. And this is normal. And I realize that you can't judge it. People are asleep. They're trying to survive. They're just stuck where they're stuck. And that was maybe their soul's plan. But I'm not going to wake them up with talk. That's not going to happen. In fact, back to my disillusioned idealists, or my target audience, they woke up, but they only woke up to their experiences, and their idealistic nature was back to the heart. So they had hearts in the right place, and they pursued their ideals to eventually realize that their ideals didn't exist. Kind of like Ralph McGee. Yeah, again, all my fellow travelers, we all had this. Again, back to disillusioned idealists. They started out as Boy Scouts and eventually awakened to reality and how they were sold a lie. What they believed in really didn't exist. So that's an important part of a critical part of the awakening process, is that I found. Yeah, I've never met one person who was awake when they were born. Never met one. I've heard of some, maybe some mystical masters, but I've never met one. And for those reasons and many others, I gave up on the mass movement approach a long time ago. Yeah, so mass movements always aim for lowest common denominator beliefs and stuff for movement cohesion. Yeah, Dennis, his all of his efforts were based on business opportunities. There's capitalism and organized religion. He's a fanatical Christian, and then capitalism, organized religion, and nationalism. So all this patriot stuff. So again, these are all these ideologies to give people in-group status. And in my opinion, it short circuits the sentience process to buy into that stuff. Because again, all it does is elevate your in-group at the expense of an out-group. And people with in-group, out-group consciousness, they can't help with what I'm doing. We can, and again, like the global elites, they cannot be seen as some evil out group. If people see them that way, they're not going to succeed in this. It cannot be with this kind of conflict-oriented approach to what the global elite are doing. And again, if my effort to build a choir, I call it choir, succeeds, it won't matter what the global elite do, and they will probably slink away. And some will be redeemed. My goal is to redeem them, redeem everybody. Everybody goes home eventually. So that's my approach. That's my attitude. In fact, my coming post will be about Brian O'Leary inviting me to help him co-found again another mass movement free energy effort, which was a catastrophe, and I was finally cured of thinking about mass movement approaches. So my next post will be about that. And again, and from my earliest days, I also I would hear from people visit us from all over the world. It became a global mecca, and the bottom line is that no nation on earth is free from these influences of the global elite. And I don't care if it's capitalist, communist, whatever it is, nobody's free of that. And back to, again, these levels of awareness, most people are in denial and fear anyway. And so they do the global elites work for them. Yeah, so this stuff is a world of abundance and love is unimaginable to the vast majority of humanity. It's interesting with AI happening right now. I'm actually seeing people like Elon Musk and other people talk about abundance. Well, AI robotics is a big deal. It can eliminate all human drudgery, but the energy issue has to be solved permanently first. That if without the energy issue being solved, we're going to have Terminator. That's what AI is going to lead to. So yeah, it has to be about abundant energy for everybody. And again, everybody on the planet being rich. It can't be the haves and the have-nots. Those days have to end. But it's not going to end though by coercion and stuff. It's going to be again the engine. Once abundance appears, everybody's going to get it. Nobody's going to be playing those games. What's mine and what's yours and all that. All that's going to end, and materialism is going to end. All the elites will end. Again, the world as we know it will end, and nobody's going to miss it. We will not. Today's world will not be missed. It'll be seen as a very primitive time. And everyone will be happy that it's behind us. And so, yeah, so there's no nation really that's free of this kind of skullduggery. And all ruling classes sort of act similarly. And so, yeah, that's how it is. In fact, China, though, back in 2015, last time I visited Jim Gilliland's ranch there to watch UFOs down in Mount Adams, he talked about a city being built in China for free energy. And Dennis was involved with Yul Brown back in the 90s. And then China actually built a city for Yul Brown to pursue Brown's gas technology. And it was like 2,000 scientists in that city. I think it was a city of maybe 10,000 people or something. Yeah, China, only place in the world could do this. They'd actually build a city around a technology. And so James said that China was building a free energy city to pursue free energy technology. And when I heard that, and James was planning on moving there with some other people. And James had been to the free energy meat grinder with a guy named Max. And so they had a free energy device, and spooks came, people died, etc. So they quit when they realized they were ahead. And James was planning on moving there. Now, how to say it? God bless him. I wish those people the best pursuing that, but I was pretty skeptical whether that would really come to pass. And whether, yeah, and it didn't, as far as I know. I haven't even kept up on it. There's so many events and things that over the years I hear about. Again, I got invited to the White House, 20 years ago and stuff, and it was like some big event and this big event. And after what I've been through, it's like, yeah, I have strong doubts that event's going to come to pass. And so there's just, again, free energy efforts have few allies, many enemies, and a totally sleeping public. And so, yeah. So anyway, so that's the last I heard of somebody trying to do it with China. So China was going to build a free energy city, and nothing came of it to my knowledge. And again, the global elites, and I've heard scuttlebutt that China might be beyond the influence of the global elites. I doubt it. Heck, it came, I was reading something recently where China was totally infiltrated by the CIA, etc. All this paranoia about a Chinese balloon floating over the United States. Well, heck, that's nothing. Yeah, yeah, it was China. This was a number of years ago where China realized that its whole power structure had been totally riddled with CIA plants and stuff. And so, yeah, if CIA can do it, the global elites certainly can. So yeah, so there's nowhere to run and hide. People try to run and hide, think you're going to do some secret enclaves or whatever. I don't think so. I don't. Again, I'm not interested in those kind of approaches. I'm trying to do something else. And so, but I respected the people that are trying, but I think the likelihood of success of those kind of efforts is extremely slim and life risky. So, yeah. So, and the bottom line as I see it is that, again, free energy tech, again, the anti-gravity, all the tech that my friends saw, if it upends almost everybody's intellectual apple carts. And so, because they're all based on scarcity, so all the dominant ideologies, in nationalism, capitalism, organized religion, and materialism, scientism, rationalism, materialism, these are all based on scarcity, and again, all about creating these in groups at the expense of out groups. And so, almost everybody is stuck in one of those. And so you can't see the next epic if you're stuck there. And then back to in groups, out groups. The people that are going to help here cannot be thinking in terms of in groups and out groups and evil elites and all this kind of stuff. It's not helpful. It's not going to get us there. Oh yeah, and again, I've seen the paranoia and all this useless, counterproductive activity I've seen over the years. So much of it. None of it leads to anything good that I've seen. And the masses, again, the masses are all about immediate self-interest, about survival. That's all they care about. I get it. And I leave them to their slumbers. Yeah. I'm only going to approach the masses when I can give them free energy. Once the masses are given free energy, then you'll get their attention, not before then. That's how I see that. And again, there is no group on earth not already devoted to free energy. There's a few of those, and none of those have a prayer, in my opinion. All these organizations, all progressive, they've all been approached. Progressive organizations, the world's governments, the world scientific organizations, they've all been approached on this subject, and nobody's home anywhere. In fact, usually you knock on the door and they set the dogs on you. I got banged on the DOE's door a couple times carrying Brian's and Dennis's spears. I've done this. I've been there, done that. And none of that stuff works. Approaching the rich and powerful and the billionaires, and I've seen so much wasted time and energy with that. Though, and it was through watching all these failures, all these dead ends, all this life-risking futility, is how I came up with my approach. Again, and it does no good to judge it. It's just where people are. It's just this is the world we live in, and so doesn't mean how to say I accept that, and I'm not judging it, but I'm like, can we have something different? And I'm like, yes, we'll have something different. In fact, the Industrial Revolution is a good example of something different. I mean, half of all children died up until a couple centuries ago. That doesn't happen anymore. So yeah, the world is an immensely better world than it used to be. And the next epic, my shorthand for Star Trek. And it's right around the corner if enough of us can muster the sentience and heart to sing the song of abundance, just to imagine what is we're on the brink of if enough of us can learn to sing together. That's what work's about. And so I've been working for 30 years to make my work worthy of that study. Just a second. And so I've spent 30 almost 40 years. So I've been spending almost 40 years after my radicalizing life-risking adventures to make my work worthy of the people I seek. Again, back to disillusioned idealists. I think those are the people who can get it. And again, I don't think they have to be rocket scientists. Again, my work is designed where you don't have to be a professional scientist to understand. Yeah, there's some, I don't know, IQ 110 maybe. I mean, yeah, you need some mental horsepower to understand, get a comprehensive perspective, but I don't think you need 150 IQ to get there. If you do, then my approach is doomed because it can't be a bunch of geniuses. I'm not trying to attract all the geniuses. Most of them are brainwashed. And so anyway, that's what I've been doing. And I think after, again, hiring an editor, many years of work, my 10,000 hours of, of work to get proficient at what I do. And that was a lot of life risking trial and error. Again, and trading notes with fellow travelers such as Brian, and years of study, and all of that led to my current approach. And again, and the material I presented, I think is adequate for the people I'm seeking to develop a comprehensive perspective. And I'm here to help them. I'm here to have that conversation. So I don't expect everybody to know all this stuff instantly. I'm here to say, let's discuss these various topics and let's talk about them. I'm not here as an oracle of truth. It's like, let's talk about these subjects and how I found my answers. And it don't have to be theirs particularly, but as I started this off with, the stuff I assert, I'm highly confident about these things. Again, I'm almost never wrong. It's all been vindicated because I'm conservative. I don't fly off with the latest conspiracist trike, etc., the latest tabloid rumors, etc. That's not my work's not about that stuff. And so anyway, achieving comprehensive perspectives is key for building what I call the choir. And I'm looking for those disillusioned idealists. And if I can find 5,000 people who can sing that song, the rest will be easy. And as I mentioned before, when I saw Dennis Lee last year, I mentioned this, and he agreed. If I can find 5,000 people who can sing that song of abundance, it's over. It will be unstoppable because the technical feat of doing free energy and free anti-gravity, etc., is not that great. But it's not something that a guy can do in his garage. So this is the thing. It's like that all these garage guys think they can do it. They can't. And Brian, that was one of Brian's big messages, was that, all these guys in their garages with their, proof of concept prototypes, et cetera. It's like the Wright brothers in their first flight. It's not an airline. You can't deliver freight, and so it's again, Brian, there's a $200 million chasm, maybe bigger, between a guy with a prototype in his garage and something ready for the public. That's a chasm that's never been bridged. And again, there are billionaires who poked into this and then they get a horse's head in their bed. The global elites threaten to kill their families and stuff to dissuade them from helping. This is part of the problem. This is why the lid's on it this way. And that's why also there's no nation on earth that has escaped it. No national government on earth is going to embrace this stuff. Communists, capitalists, China. Again, China was interesting for a second. I can imagine what happened there, or some small country, Cuba, Costa Rica, or Tom Bearden went down to Brazil to work on his prototypes, etc. So I don't know. I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that trying to find the right place. Again, I just sketched here in this post all the things that are light against it, all the beliefs, etc., that are just stacked. Again, the odds are very stacked against independent efforts, but if 5,000 people can see the next epic before it comes and actually sing the song of abundance to attract the people who are going to do something, I estimate 100,000 people. Could be a lot less, but again, so that no one person is unduly at risk. That's why I'm doing this. So yeah, it's not dependent on me. I don't want this stuff dependent on me. Yeah, if it's just dependent on me, it's not going to work. And so I need people to learn to sing the song, and they can't all have underground technology shows, etc. But if they have enough experience, in fact, even paranormal experiences, all this kind of stuff. If the people I'm looking for have enough experience, then my journey and Brian's journey and Dennis's journey and my fellow travelers, it doesn't seem so outlandish. Because a lot of it does seem outlandish, right? Getting offered $1 billion to stop what you're doing, kidnap for underground technology, all these things, Huh. Brian's being asked to go to Mars, in order to go to Mars, was an interesting footnote for the people in my circles. Yeah, that was one of the world's strangest interviews, being told to go to Mars. But in the scheme of this stuff, yeah, even Brian's life, that was probably just an amusing footnote to Brian's life. So anyway. So yeah, if the choir can form, the rest will be easy. And so anyway, so I just gave a brief sketch of how I see the world, how I see creation, and what I'm trying to do, and how my journey has informed me, and how I came to the approach that I'm taking. And it's the only one I'm interested in. And I'm not interested in banging any more doors. Been there, done that. Yeah, not interested in banging on doors. Nobody's home, or they set the dogs on you. So anyway, so that's all I have for today. So thanks for watching.